this, or was there a kind of a so we're conscious of the fact that it's very important that we have all of the political houses,
Yeah, I
the
think so.
different parties and the different levels of parliament support this and speak openly about it. There's often been a comment made that often the busiest time for prostitution in Ireland is often around the annual conferences for political parties.
Yeah, it was agreed.
Yeah, they agreed and they were supporting this, and it was not a question. You know, both left wing and right wing were developed the idea, and they thought it was a good idea.
Yeah. But also now, I mean, we had a legislation for 10 years. Now we can give, like Ireland, we can give details, and you can see some positive effects that we didn't thought about back in '99, because back in '99 we were not discussing human trafficking. We had the legislation against human trafficking as a criminal act in 2002. Of course, we had trafficking before, but we didn't call it that. So, I mean, that's the most important part, that we took this legislation without having problems, what we say today, with trafficking. But we can also see that one of the positive effects is that we can fight organized crime. This is another tool to fight organized crime, and it's also a tool to to find these persons and take them to court.
Just a second last question. What sort of support mechanisms are in place in Sweden to assist women in prostitution to move on from prostitution?
Yeah,
I think one of the comments clearly even we've heard today is that, you know, for most women, besides the fact that they don't want to be in prostitution, they're doing it because they need the money. It's usually huge. What sort of mechanism or supports in place to actually help women leave it behind?
Yeah, as it looks today, it is always a discussion, or it depends a little bit if you're a Swedish citizen or if you come from some other European country or from third country. We have no specialized exit programs so far, but we are working with that issue, and we're pointed to work especially with that. So we look for if we need some kind of special programs to exit. At the same time, all the victims that we meet today can be put into the social welfare system that already exists. So I think that's also an important part. You shouldn't invent the fifth wheel. I mean, use the networks you got today. Use the methods. That's fairly enough, I think, for to start with.
Okay, so before I let you go, I think in summary what we've heard today and what we've seen is that the legislation has worked to reduce the number of women in prostitution, reduce the level of demand, and therefore reduce the level of trafficking.
yeah,
And I think it sounds like strategically, on an overall basis, it went a long way in changing attitudes towards women generally, and looking at this issue as an equality issue has kind of transformed how women are viewed in a broader sense within the community.
Yeah, that's right.
But thank you for your time, and safe home.
Super.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
To roll up. Okay. And you keep looking at John the whole time?
Yeah.
Today has been a very important day in the context of the trafficking movement in Ireland. We have been trying to replicate what we've called the Swedish model in Ireland, and there's legislation being brought to our Parliament floor to hopefully advance that. But maybe just could you explain to us at a very high level what the basic tenets of the Swedish legislation was in criminalising men buying sex?
Yeah, a short answer would be that it has its ground in the gender equality discussions or work over the years, especially from the women organizations in Sweden, but also that we see that this is a form of men's violence against women. I think that's the most important part. It's we don't have the law enforcement perspective to start with, but we can see now after some years that it's also a really good tool to fight human trafficking.
And what was the scale, or do you have data or information regarding the scale of trafficked women and girls into the sex trade in Sweden?
Today?
Previously?
Previously, yeah. If you go back to the 70s, 30 years back, maybe 40 years back, the figures was 3,000 girls in prostitution in Sweden and 500 brothels. Today, if you see the figures for today, you will find in Stockholm city area, you will find 5 up to 10 girls in street prostitution, and indoor prostitution or internet prostitution, you will find 80, at the maximum 100. Yeah, so it's a big change, and in the country, in general, I would say the number of prostitutes is between 500-600 up to maximum 1,000. But I would say around 500-600 in the country.
Okay, well, it sounds like, again, a huge improvement and a huge change is taking place. Surely the biggest challenge was trying to change the mindset of those men who are buying sex. What sort of campaigns or communication strategies were engaged with in Sweden to promote the story, the reality of prostitution for people, and in trying to change the mindset? I mean, was the legislation a hugely important part in that changing of the mindset?
When the legislation took place in 1999, it was a large debate within the country about the legislation, and people were not aware about the problems according to prostitution, and they were not aware about the connection between organized crime and prostitution. But they become aware about the problem, and thanks to the media, authors and film editors, they have spread the knowledge, and our cases in Sweden since 2004 and forward have had an enormous impact within the society. People have been very, very well informed by media, and that's, I would say, the most important source of information and knowledge in this subject.
And as a really important part of this is also the Swedish, the government's action plan against prostitution and trafficking, which started in January 2009 and ended in December 2010. It was 36 different tasks who was pointed to different state agencies, but also to NGOs.
One question, I suppose, that's often raised here as part of the debate is that if you try to reduce prostitution or criminalise men who buy sex, that it would lead to an increase in violence against women generally, rape within marriage. What has been the reality, or what has been the experience in Sweden in that respect?
It's no such evidence at all. Nothing. Actually, I would say, thanks to this legislation, we have a debate, a discussion about how we will treat each other within the society. Is it right to have sex, or do you deserve it? Yeah, and that question will be. You talk about that even when you talk about how you act against women, and actually I would say that the knowledge and the experience is that we have we treat each other better thanks to this legislation, thanks to this debate about if it's okay or not to buy another person for sexual reasons.
And at the time of the legislation, was there universal political support for